And so, yeah, if you're looking at it like that, you're like, it looks like a church youth group. But the difference is that it's the difference between a shepherd and a missionary. Most of our church-based youth groups are oriented to shepherding,
Right.
With a desire to outreach, right? And to shepherd, you gather the ones that you have, and you try to invite others to join. With Young Life, it's a very different approach. Young Life. If we're not going to kids, if we're not praying and going and meeting kids and getting to know them on their turf, Young Life doesn't happen.
Well, Steve, it's good to welcome you into this cave that we live in, this little hideaway. I'm really glad that you could take the time to get together today and talk about Young Life. Like I was saying to you earlier, I don't think anybody can talk about it with as much understanding of history and context as you can. So I'm really anxious for people to be able to see how CityServe works, why it's there, and what the goal is, and maybe how that's changing in the future. So maybe we could start here. Why don't you give a brief history of what's happened with Young Life in Cowlitz County and where it came from and how it got established, and then we can talk about where it's going to go next.
Yeah, great. No, that's great. I am in a unique position to kind of have not only been part of the beginning of it, but also connected to the people who were getting things in motion and really responding to God prior to me even knowing that Longview, Kelso, Cowlitz County existed on the map. I think
everybody thinks you're from here.
No. I grew up in Texas, and I'm kind of the Young Life story. I'm a kid that that Young Life reached. Or Jesus reached through Young Life. And so I was on staff there, which is a whole other story. And in 2000, we'd been married for about a year. We had our first child. And we're kind of just thinking about and praying about, is it time to move on from Young Life? I've been on staff for about 4 years. Or is it time to make a change? And so we had dedicated ourselves in kind of the summer of 2000 to kind of pray and look at that. And when we kind of got to the end of that time, really kind of discerned that, I'm supposed to stay with Young Life, but it's time to get out of Texas, and which was fine with my wife.
Now everybody's heading back there.
Well, yeah, it was fine with my wife because she was from Colorado, so she was ready to be out of Texas. We loved it there in terms of the people and stuff, but we felt a real call to move out of there and to kind of just strike out and trust God in the process. Prior to 2000, though, really the beginning of Young Life getting reestablished, there was a couple of stints like early in the 70s for a minute, in the early 80s didn't really stick at that time either. But people in this area had Young Life experiences throughout several decades, and going to camp up at Malibu and just different touch points with Young Life along the way. A couple of those folks were Dan Gallagher and Steve Wilcox, and they were in a breakfast together. They had a men's breakfast together with, I believe it was Dan Gallagher, Steve Wilcox, Roger Allen, John Crook was another guy, and I think Randy Sundberg. So they would just meet at Charlie's, for breakfast on Tuesday mornings. And then the other person that kind of was interested in this was Harlan Gilliland at Longview Community Church. And it was really Dan and Harlan, and then Steve came along because Steve had a really great experience with Young Life when he was growing up in the 70s. And it was kind of their brainchild to look at what it would take to bring Young Life to Cowlitz County and really put it together in such a way that it would stick. And it was just a sense of, Young Life itself as a mission was really an outgrowth of the church. And you go all the way back to 1939, and people think Jim Rayburn was the one who founded Young Life, but Young Life really was founded by the pastor of the Presbyterian Church in Gainesville, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Not really founded, but the idea, and then supported by three little old ladies who would gather every week to pray in a house across the street from the high school in 1939 Gainesville, Texas, which is really interesting because as the story goes, Jim Rayburn shows up to this little church in Gainesville, Texas, because he's a Dallas Seminary student, and he's going to be the youth pastor, which is kind of cutting edge. There wasn't youth pastors per se.
Yeah.
He was going to be the associate pastor in charge of youth. Well, he goes into that church, as the story goes, and starts to meet the pastor, and the pastor says, "Hey, Jim, I'm glad you're here. I really don't want to see you around here much." There's the door. And he's like, "Well, what? I don't understand." And it was the pastor's vision, really. He's like, "Hey, look, there's families here, there's kids here. We're actually doing fine. But there's a high school down the block full of kids that would never darken this door. Go figure out how to get to them." And that was it. And that's the basics.
What a great vision.
And he was like, "Okay." So he kind of tried a bunch of different, ways to go about that. And then just really realized, I just need to go spend time where they're at and connect with them and really take the approach of being in their world. John 1:14, the Word became flesh and lived among us. I need to move into their neighborhood. I just need to get to know them and build relationships and see what grows from there. And that really kind of developed the way and the approach of Young Life, 75, 80 years later, that are still at the core. And then come to find out, he was into it about two years, and he said, "I found out these three ladies were praying, and it had been praying specifically for several years that God would send somebody to come and reach those kids at that high school."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I never missed a prayer meeting after that with those folks." So flash forward, to here locally, it was kind of the same vision, same ideas. Like it's not that there's not good youth ministry going on. It's not any of that. It's just that, there's a high school across the lake, one up the street, that's still full of kids that may never darken this door, and who's going to them. We have lots of stuff for kids to come to, but who's going to the kids?
Right.
And so that was kind of the vision. And so this men's group of breakfast group kind of said, we need, we've been meeting, doing this Bible study. We need a cause. We need something to do. And so that's kind of when they landed on this and started putting the pieces in place to really move forward. So that involved getting to know who the regional director was out of Portland. They said, we really want to be connected to Portland. Southwest Washington's more of more oriented to Portland than like the Olympia area. So that would be a better connection. And so they were in communication with a guy named John Franklin, who was the regional director at the time. And they just continued to communicate back and forth. And okay, here we can pull together some committee and et cetera, et cetera. So all this was happening between like 1996 and 2000. It took about 4 years of just laying some groundwork there. And then 2000 comes, and Amy and I are in Texas praying about what our next move is. And I contacted my regional director and said, hey, I think it's time for us to make a move. We'd like to look at somewhere in the Northeast or the Northwest because we've got some family out there, and we'd like to raise our kids close to family if possible. And he said, great. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting a call from actually a group of people out of Portland that were interested in flying me up to take a look at their area. And I said, okay. So made arrangements there. And then the night before I'm supposed to leave, I get a call from John Franklin. He said, hey, while you're there, would you mind taking a drive up to Longview, Kelso, and taking a look at maybe they want to start Young Life there? And I was like, what? It's literally like 9 o'clock. I'm flying out the next morning. I was like, what is Longview, Kelso? And we tried to get on the web. It's 2000, so it's pretty sketchy. The whole the websites were not great.
So
then.
Y2K was a real thing then.
Yeah. Well, thankfully we had all survived Y2K. We all had plenty of toilet paper for the the next decade or so. Yeah. So we We looked at the Kelso. We tried to look up the Kelso and Longview website, and we're like, "What is this place?" And there was like 14 pictures of the library and 2 of the Squirrel Bridge, and that was the website. I was like, okay. So we came up, interviewed with the group in Portland, and that just it just wasn't a fit, which was fine. And some things were going on, and so I drove up here by myself. And connected with Dan Gallagher and met him in the parking lot of the Red Lion. First of all, they told me it was it was kind of rural. Well, I'm from Texas, so I'm thinking Dairy Queen and a stoplight, And I'm driving up here, I was like, this isn't rural. This is great. And Amy's famous line, kind of serious, kind of not, was, if it doesn't have a Target and a Starbucks, it's not even in the conversation, So as I'm driving in, I'm going to the Red Line. I was like, oh, hey, there's Target. Okay, we got something to talk about. Anyway, so I met with them and had a great conversation with them. I met with Dan and Steve, and then Jeff and Mary Beth Tack had come on board with the committee, and Randy Sundberg had a great dinner. And I drove out of there going, holy cow, I think we're supposed to come here. And it made no sense. I'd never started a Young Life area. I'd never started a club, but it just was a sense of this is where we're supposed to be. So
it always surprises me when someone comes here and something happens, they catch something. Because I've heard that from Cole is like that. Cole Pruitt's like that. He came from Louisiana or something and just loved it here and decided we're going to raise our kids here.
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
Yeah, I can't explain it other than it was just a deep sense of we're supposed to come here. So we were staying in Vancouver. I drove down to back down to Vancouver. We were staying with Amy's sister, and she, Sophie was a baby at the time, and she was kind of sick. So that's why Amy didn't come up. She goes, "What'd you think?" And I go, I think maybe we need to go back up. I didn't want to kind of taint the well. I wanted to get her full response. I was like, let's go back up, in a day or two, because we were here for a couple of days. I contacted Jeff and Mary Beth, and they met us at Starbucks, so I could show Amy there's Starbucks, here's Target,
Starbucks.
And then we had a nice lunch again with Steve, and then Sue Boaglio and Dave and Gail Hicks at the Gallagher's house, and had this great discussion. And Amy could tell you, she's like, we're driving out of the Gallagher's neighborhood, and I just said, so what do you think? She goes, I can't explain it, but we're supposed to come here. And I was like, all right. And it was the craziest, wildest adventure we'd ever, we were trying to explain to our family, we're going to move to Washington State.
Yeah.
And help start Young Life. And then we did 6 months later.
So getting it off the ground, is that something you did, or is it something you did with a group of people? Were these guys part of the launch?
Oh, yeah. No, it wasn't me. I mean, it was, obviously God had been laying the groundwork. It was a collective effort for sure. One of the huge gift that we had, really good financial backing to get started. It was kind of the seed financial backing, but more important, or as important as that, is we had adults that were really interested in creating a mission community.
Yeah.
And really, Young Life can be done on a volunteer basis, but to really get traction and to really develop something that's lasting and not just start something but establish something, it really requires eventually some time to be thinking about it all the time.
Yeah.
And a director to help kind of connect people to the right places and the right things. But it really was a mission community. I mean, there was a group of people that already established that welcomed us in. Ryan Prothero and his wife Clara were back in the area. They had been Young Life leaders in Ellensburg, and that's where they got connected to Young Life. And Ryan, they talked to him about being the area director at one point, but he's like, I really think I'm just supposed to be a teacher, and I'll help out. But Young Life wouldn't be where it is today without the Protheros, for sure. I mean, Ryan and I couldn't have done it without Ryan.
Yeah.
He was right there from the beginning, kind of just the two of us together. And he did a lot to help just keep us going and keep us moving forward. Having a partner in ministry is everything, when especially when you're starting up.
Say that a little louder so pastors can hear that.
Yeah. Well, having a partner in ministry, and we thoroughly enjoy each other. We laugh a lot, but we're very different in complementary ways, I think. It took some time to figure that out, but the reason we had middle school ministry in this area is because of Ryan. That was really where he wanted to get established, and So we got started, and interestingly enough, the committee really was from Longview. We had Jeff and Mary Beth Tack, kind of the representation there, but again, we really wanted to establish something, and really kind of believed that we wanted to really look where God was working and join Him there, kind of a thing, and that was our approach, and the committee was willing to, not just say, hey, we got kids at this school, so we're going to start here. It's like, no, let's really listen to what God's doing and seek what He's doing. And I learned that there was a group of moms that were praying for Kelso High School.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to take a page out of Rayburn's book and go find out what's going on there. And really what the approach that we took, it was, there's a couple things. It was prayer is our primary strategy for reaching every kid. We want to be praying deliberately that God will open doors, and really live out Colossians 4, 2-6. Therefore, be prayerful and watchful. Pray. I'm paraphrasing here, but pray that the doors will be open. Be thankful and pray for us that again that our message will be received. But as importantly, walk in wisdom toward those who are without. Go to the people that you're trying to reach, and let your conversation be seasoned with salt, full of grace, and be in their world in a way that they know that they're loved and seen and cared for. And behind that is, they matter. We're there because they matter, and they matter because Jesus says they matter. Yeah, and has done all of that He's done to show that. So took a page out of Rayburn's playbook, and went and met with that Moms in Touch group, was the group at the time, and was praying with them, and we were praying specifically. Another core is, we pray. We have Matthew 9:38 list, and that's when that's a passage where it says Jesus saw the crowds, and his heart went out to him, his gut wrenched, and because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. And I don't know if you've ever gone to a middle school cafeteria or a high school cafeteria or watched, anything where there's a crowd of teenagers. I think there's no better description than and they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd.
That's so good.
They're harassed internally, they're harassed externally. There's senses of helplessness, identity, all those things. And Jesus looks on that and his heart breaks. But then he turns to the disciples and says, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And so pray to the Lord of the harvest that He will send out workers into His fields. And I think a lot of times people will look at that and say, well, it's a scarcity mentality. Like, right. Well, the workers are just few, and that's just what. No, he said, like, yes, the workers are few, but pray that God will send His workers in, and because it really does have to be a sense of God moving you into that place,
it's the harvest that drives things, not the workers. Right, the workers aren't driving the movement.
Exactly, but unless somebody has trying to convince somebody go work in this field. I mean, they may participate for a little while. Yeah, but there won't be a sense of it won't stick, and so we believed and continue to believe that God already has His eye on every single person that He intends to have in the harvest. They just haven't awoken to that fact yet. Yeah. And so that Matthew 9:38 list is people, or the people that we think about, that we say, Lord, move us into their world, or move them into our world, or give them an awareness of the harvest of participating with us in Young Life to reach these kids. And we just started kind of praying that God would move people into the mission and into the roles, and it came together for Kelso. I mean, the people that came forward that God provided, it was a Kelso team, and which kind of surprised the folks that were kind of Longview based, but they were not resistant to it. It was like, okay, and so we assembled a group of people that were interested in being Young Life leaders. They didn't know what that meant, what did that look like, but basically it just means we're going to train you to go where kids are and to connect with them, and we're going to do some things along the way like club and camp, but those are all just intended to further the relationship that you can continue to build with kids, and somewhere along the way you'll have a chance to to share who Jesus is, and hopefully they'll see it long before they hear it from you. And
so, Steve, what's the key to an effective Young Life program in a city? What makes it really work or really effective when it comes to a local Young Life organization?
Well, I really have seen and believe that it really comes down to not just being a program, a youth program, or and certainly not just being driven by a staff person, right? It really requires a mission community to be developed. And what I mean by that is that we collectively agree that we want to reach these kids, and collectively know that there are a variety of roles that need to be filled and committed to in order to really make that happen. From everything from behind the scenes, like the committee work, that they basically help spread awareness in the community among other parents, business leaders, church leaders, that sort of thing. But that collectively we're going from creating awareness to helping people understand what it really is, and we believe that out of that, some people will then want to become more engaged with it. Like, tell me more. Where can I serve?
Right.
And then commitment will flow out of that as well. So it's this process of bringing a community together and helping them find their place in it. And some are going to be those leaders the Young Life leaders, the volunteers that want to go and connect with those kids directly. Some are going to be the people that help, put together the logistics and the communications around, camps and clubs and that sort of thing. Some are going to be the ones that want to help fund it, but all equally clear on their role in it happening, and it happening collectively, like each part helping to support the other to the point of contact being so that volunteer leader can effectively and consistently and over a long term connect with kid after kid after kid.
So would you have answered that question that way when you first started? Because it sounds like that's something that's begun evolving in a really intentional way for Young Life.
Yeah,
recently.
I would have said that then, and I saw we saw it happen then, and I think the challenge is when something starts to grow. Any organization, any church, any business, or whatever it is, you start and you have it going, and then it's going, and then you start managing the thing that's going. Right, and so it's hard I don't think, and I didn't have really the understanding of we built this mission community, but what we didn't do was figure out how to perpetuate it. Right. And how to continue to bring the right people into the right roles. Sometimes we would invite people on committee and come and join committee, and it wasn't as intentional or as clear as this is what we're asking you to do and to be. Right. And we just kind of started filling roles, I think. All in good stuff was happening all along the way, but I think because we were managing this and really engaged with what's happening, we didn't have enough ability to step back and go, okay, how do we keep this going in a way that will outlast all of us? Yeah. We were just kind of caught up in what was happening then.
It sounds really similar to some of the about how churches do about 15 to 20 years in. Mm-hmm. You work really hard to establish some momentum, mm-hmm. and then there's a shift to maintaining the organization mm-hmm. instead of maintaining the momentum. Right. And for churches, it's always been, well, we just need more people. We just need more money. Right. But it's really not. There's really something that's really cool about momentum in a spiritual environment that I think is driven by the Holy Spirit, not so much people. Yeah. But it's you aligning yourself with the Holy Spirit. And it sounds like this is just part of the evolution of Young Life Kelso Longview.
Yeah, and I think it's just exactly what you said, it's just a common progression that can happen, doesn't need to happen, but the tail end is up wagging the dog a little bit. Yeah. And by the time you realize it, you basically have to pull back and kind of reset and restart, which is hard to do because it means, it feels like you're going backwards. And in some sense you are, but you're really going to a return to what you knew
so good.
was the right way to do it.
The main thing.
And that you maybe lost, or you didn't lose it. It just got buried under all the other stuff, right? And so I think that, and I'm excited that that's kind of where we're returning to now. Is we've, I will say the thing that I love and I'm thrilled about, and I think is evidence that God has continued to care passionately about seeing that Young Life continues to be a part of what's going on here in reaching kids. It's even through COVID, again, with complete credit to Ryan Prothero and Clara, even through COVID, they were, we hadn't had a staff person. Our staff person resigned and moved on to something else in 2020, in like May of 2020. And so up until this past October, we haven't had a full-time staff person. But even through that time, Ryan had really led the way in making sure that kids were still being connected to. They did Zoom clubs and they, that sort of thing. So for 24 straight years, Young Life has happened. And with the exception of COVID, kids have been able to go to Young Life summer camp, even in the midst of turnover and turmoil and everything else. So I'm pleased that, it's longevity. I thought I would be here 5 years, and it's 24 years later.
That's crazy.
And
your kids who are grown now have taken that experience with them, and they're still talking about Young Life as adults.
They are, and they're still involved. And it was really kind of fun because actually, kind of going back even further, Amy's my father-in-law, met Jesus in 1955 at a Young Life camp in Colorado.
Wow.
And that's their spiritual history. And then went back and worked at that camp in like 1957. And then we're Young Life leaders at Wheaton in the early 60s in Chicago. Well, we got when Ella went to summer camp with her kids, that was third generation of Young Life kids, and Ben and third generation of Young Life worker kids. So those are just kind of cool little nuggets that you kind of get to savor a little bit, and seeing that God continues to do, though. So
what's next for Young Life in Kelso Longview?
Well, like I said, we're really in a really exciting, great place in the sense of we've been given the room to step back and look at how we went about establishing and using it a bit as a template to reestablish.
Yeah.
Amber Moats has recently been hired to be the full-time area director. Amber has been phenomenal in her role as Young Lives director, which is our Young Life ministry to teen moms, which was revolutionary and very cutting edge, when it started, and continues to be. I mean, in terms of, a marginalized population within a marginalized population. And she has done a phenomenal job, starting off at the area level and then moving on to the regional level. Is doing such a great job. But in this gap where we haven't had a staff person, they've continued to live here in this community, be invested in this community, relationships. Their kids were born here, grown up here, and she just looked around and said, I really want to make an impact where I am, not just kind of get a little sprinkle here and there across Oregon and Southwest Washington, but really invest here. And I think it's really important that organizations not just have a next person up mentality or throw a warm body in, but really step back and pray about and think about and look at, where is the organization, where does it need to go, and what kind of person do we need at this time to help us get there. And when we stepped back and looked at that, Amber really did check all those boxes.
Yeah.
And then a few extra along the way. I mean, she's a very passionate, loving, caring person, but she's also very intentional. She has that unique ability, I think, to see the big picture and see the vision, but also be able to see the steps and connect the dots that will help get there.
Yeah.
And so, in her role as director, and we're trying to very much emphasize director, doesn't mean that you do all the things. Just like a director of a film spends most of their time behind the camera. Even the ones that are actor directors, they're in front of the camera sometimes,
right?
And they're engaged in that way. as a area director, a Young Life director, should be engaged with kids and that sort of thing. But most of their work is behind the camera, helping everybody else be in their places and ready to do what they need to do. So I think she's the right person for what we need right now. And so we're just trying to, again, kind of reset and help the community know that one of the goals is that no one in this community ever says, I didn't know there was Young Life here, and create that awareness, but it needs to move from awareness to actually understanding. Like, I think there's a lot of people in the community that are aware that Young Life is here, but I think that there's also a big gap in understanding what it actually is. I think there's, especially within the faith community here, I think it can be easily believed that Young Life is just a community youth group.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, it has kind of all the trappings. Oh, you meet weekly. That's a weekly church group. Oh, you go to camps. Oh, yeah, that's a church camp. And when you meet, you sing songs and play games, and somebody talks about Jesus. Well, that sounds like a youth group. And so, yeah, if you're looking at it like that, you're like, it looks like a church youth group. But the difference is that it's the difference between a shepherd and a missionary. Most of our church-based youth groups are oriented to shepherding, right? With a desire to outreach, right? And to shepherd, you gather the ones that you have, and you try to invite others to join. With Young Life, it's a very different approach. Young Life. If we're not going to kids, if we're not praying and going and meeting kids and getting to know them on their turf, Young Life doesn't happen.
That's so important, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think people realize that. I do think that they think it's kind of a very loosely configured youth group.
Yeah.
It's really different.
No, I mean, it really is different in the paradigm. I mean, it's just a different paradigm to approach, and there are plenty of people who care deeply about kids knowing Jesus. And some of them are like, are the shepherds. There's like, give me a group of kids and I'll love them and I'll lead them and I'll invest in them. And there are others who are, I think, sitting in churches, driving by the high schools and looking at the crowds that are harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd and saying,
someday they'll get their act together and come to church.
Well, I think there are some that drive by and say that.
Yeah.
But I think there are really those who are like, I want to go and be amongst them, and I just don't know how. And Young Life is the how.
Yeah.
And so, that's the heart and soul of it. I mean, even if we never did a club, a weekly meeting, even if we never took kids to camp, if we had a group of people that were praying consistently and immersing themselves amongst kids, that would be Young Life. Because all the other stuff is an outgrowth of that.
Yeah. What do you need most right now?
I think exactly kind of just what we were talking about. We need folks to be aware, but also be willing to move from their awareness to really understanding, what Young Life is and how they can play a role in that. We really want people to have the opportunity to engage in what we're calling, rebuilding this mission community. Yeah. Because there is a role for everyone to play. Well, everyone. There are multiple roles that people can connect to that are specific, and we're doing the work to really help clarify what those positions are and ways that people can give. Everything from being on an executive team, and the executive team is just a handful of people that are thinking about the whole area and how this ministry can grow across the area, filtering down to individual campuses and just a focus on campus. Young Life isn't something that is in the schools necessarily. Right. It's just we're oriented toward our focus being about praying for and seeking to connect with a group of kids at that particular campus. And so people who love Mark Morris and love Jesus, we want to know you, because if you want the kids at Mark Morris or at Ari Long or Monticello Middle School or wherever it is, if you're really interested in those kids, connecting to Jesus, and you want to be part of going to them or helping to send people to them, then that's what's needed. It
seems like in the past, maybe it still exists, I don't know for sure, that the schools and the church have been kind of adversarial. Yet Young Life has always had kind of a welcome, come on in, relationship with the schools. I know that has to do a lot with the leadership of the school, whoever, the principal, the leader of the school, and the leader of Young Life somehow making contact with each other so that door can open. But where's it at right now? Are the schools open to what Young Life wants to do?
I think it goes back to the relationship that you talk about, and how we approach what it means to try to connect to that particular school. I once had a conversation with a school principal that was known to be very have anybody step on their campus. But we had an opportunity to sit down with them, and then the person that I'd gone with, that's always key, have somebody who has a relationship.
Yeah.
Had a relationship, and this person was willing to hear us out. And the conversation, and this person was not at all, would have been one of the least open people imaginable. And so, the conversation literally started with him sitting back in his chair, his arms back like this, and he said, "So what do you want?" and we had a lot of people praying for this meeting, and my response was, "I just want to know what you want. What do you need? We just want to help you. I know it's really hard here. I know you probably have a shortage of everything. This is your turf. This is your place. You're responsible for this place, and you're responsible ultimately for everybody who comes in here. So we want to honor that, but we also want to be helpful to you. So how can we help?"
Yeah.
And through the progression of that conversation, he went from this to leaning forward and writing down notes and goes, "Okay, so here's what I'm thinking." He's like,
I love that.
We need help here and here. Can your folks help us out there? I was like, "Yep." He goes, "So, and what if somebody sat out at the front desk, and because kids can sometimes get lost, they don't know what to do that first week. Could one of your volunteers come help that?" "Sure, you bet." And so that campus opened up for us.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to be manipulative. But I just sincerely, and that's kind of always been the approach, is not that we have a right to be here.
Yeah.
It's that what can we do to serve? How can we help you? And just know that when we're here to serve you. We're not going to be trying to slip pamphlets in kids' lockers or anything like that. We're just present. We just want to live in the neighborhood with you guys.
Well, it doesn't take much more than 5 minutes with a principals in specific, to know that they're completely overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much pressure on them to be perfect and do everything perfect, and they just need a lot of help.
They need help.
And it's really difficult to ask for help. But when you come in there and offer help, they do sit down and write a few things down that they really could use some help with. And that's brilliant.
Well, and they look at you and go, "Are you going to be a problem, or are you going to be a help?"
Yeah.
So
how do people who are listening to this get in contact with Young Life, and especially if a pastor hears this and wants to have somebody from Young Life come and just tell them a little bit more on a Sunday? How does that happen?
So, one of the things that we're doing is we're rebuilding our executive team and really positioning everybody in that comes into Young Life to be prepared to kind of engage with whoever is interested in knowing more.
Yeah.
So, folks can reach out to me. In the church community, especially among pastors, James Dieter is on our executive team, and he is really taking on the role of being our church liaison.
Yeah.
Specifically connecting, helping pastors in the area move from that awareness of Young Life to really understanding it in a way that they can identify, wow, this is how our church can participate in this mission, like we do with our other missions that we are engaged with, whether that's we send some missionaries into Young Life. Great news is you don't have to send them to Guatemala.
Yeah.
They just need to go to Monticello Middle School. It's not very far. So connecting with James, connecting with myself, and then also connecting with Ryan Prothero. If he's kind of continuing to look over Kelso and Amber Moats. So there's.
We'll put that in the liner notes too.
Yeah. So there's a local website, lowercolumbia.younglife.org. is a great way to connect with us. So, yeah, we would love to sit down and have a conversation and fill in any blanks. But again, it's people, it's people who feel compelled. You may end up on our Matthew 9:38 list. That we'll pray that God will provide a way for you to get engaged, and we'll see where that meets up. But that's generally how it's going moving forward.
Very cool. Well, from one local missionary to another, I pastored for a long time. Now I feel like I'm a missionary to Kelso Longview.
Absolutely.
And it is a different frame of reference. I mean, it's a different context. It's delightful to be a missionary here.
Yeah.
I love the mission field here. It's really good. So thank you, Steve. Thank you for everything you've done, for the foundation you laid, and for the continued energy that you're given to it. It's really important. I know that the people that are involved now appreciate it. I appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm really grateful to be on my first podcast. I don't know how to handle going viral, because I know that's going to happen next. So the book deals and all that comes next. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks again.